So hi.
Hello. Love it.
Yeah, me too. We can decide later, if we want to change. People have to pay $50 to come see us.
Oh my gosh.
I know, right? So here's my topic.
Okay.
So, and yes, I've been thinking about this. It's kind of a two-parter. One part is that we've had a continuing conversation about each of us still being employed, and yet a lot of our examples come out of our employment situation. A lot of the things we want to talk about come out of those experiences, and we've been trying to figure out a way to navigate that. I don't
hmm
have a great answer on how we're going to navigate that yet, but I have another example from that experience. So as you well know, I have moved into a position that is fraught with issues. Um, but one of the interesting issues is I have a younger colleague who is now part of his time is administrative. He's a associate chair. And I'm excited for that. And I rallied for him, and I've been really excited about it. But so part of my issue is surrounding him moving into a leadership role without a lot of leadership training,
hmm
and and then me taking over a program that had an incredibly competent leader prior to me and had a very competent, good system of running the program. Uh, and now I have a faculty that doesn't want to change. And so
hmm
everything that I do that's not exactly like how it was done before is problematic.
hmm
I mean, from the day that we're going to have the meeting, from the way I send the email, um,
hmm
like it's not exactly like the previous person would have done it. So I started thinking a lot about that. I mean, it's been bugging me for a bit of time, um, and but it's more and more coming to a head. We're in our first full week back,
hmm
and these issues are coming up, and I'm trying to figure out. So maybe you can give me some advice, since you're in a leadership position, where you have to, sometimes talk to people. I'm in a position that I'm going to have to talk to them, but the people, faculty in the program, and express this issue that's coming to a head. And then but then there's a second, like, side conversation, like I'm going to need to do individually with the the young faculty member who is I think probably trying to do his very best. He's not doing anything that's dramatically wrong, but what he's
hmm
starting to do is micromanage everything. And to me, when you start micromanaging, it's a sign that you're worried that you're not competent in what you're doing, because you get worried about letting people do their job,
hmm
that somehow you think you need. And it for me, it's bringing back very sour memories of a previous chair who micromanaged everything we did.
hmm
And I mean, and to the point, like, things like I'll send an email, but then he'll contradict me on another email.
hmm
Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, weird.
Yeah, I would say, like, from my lived experience, which honestly, the first thing you were talking about was, like, we always run into this impasse with, we have these jobs, we got to be careful, but we're talking about our lived experience, what we're doing. You know what I mean? So there's no way
Yeah.
to avoid it, probably. So um anyway, when things have been sideways for me, it's exactly in that time where I've asserted more control. Just because I have the authority to do it doesn't mean it's the best way to go. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? And
Right.
when things are going well, I'm having those side conversations, and I'm using those side conversations when I'm having, using is not the right word. I'm allowing myself to be open to those side conversations. It's not, it's there's reciprocity. There's a dialectic, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe my union rep is right about this thing. You know what I mean? Like, maybe I have to be open to that. Um and and maybe it is that, and maybe that's the thing that he needs to learn. You know what I mean? Um
Yeah. And I want to be very mindful of the fact that I've been in his shoes. It's,
yeah,
I- you know, but I don't, but I'm going to have to confront it on some level, or it's only going to get worse.
right.
So I've been thinking
Um
about. about like, how do I go about doing that? And it's such a problem. Like, it's an overarching problem. It's not just him. It's an overarching problem in, I think, education faculties. There are some people that are in education faculties at universities that have been trained in leadership. And I was just saying this to somebody today. There's some of us that have innate skills in leadership that make us particularly good at
Mhm.
doing that kind of work. We're either good with people, we have strengths. And I think all of us that want to be in those positions, there's things that make us strong. I am
Yeah.
a good relationship builder most of the time. I am very student service oriented in my work. I
Mhm.
am not necessarily the most timely on the paperwork. It's never been the thing I love to do. Um, but I never miss a deadline either. So I'm not a 9 to 5er that
Mhm.
I think some people are, but I've got no problem working to midnight, right? But that's
Mhm.
that's just me. I don't expect that of other leaders. That's just who I am. But I've
Mhm.
learned a lot about me because I'm getting old. This is a younger person. And by the way, I worry about, things that he's fairly new to the university. So I worry. I don't want to take away his energy. I don't want to take away his enthusiasm. I don't want to put him on the defensive, but I
Mhm.
also think it is not being a leader if I don't talk to him about the issues.
Yeah, I would say too, like, I mean, it reminds me too of like I was as a young assistant principal, I was I was put into the role, and I was a pretty strong lieutenant. So
Mhm.
he's kind of a lieutenant, and in that role, it sort of organically grew. And I learned part of the job of being a lieutenant was to push back at the right time and not push back, and you know what I mean, and come to an understanding of we would have it out behind closed doors sometimes, like have really not aggressive, but very, we'll say very frank conversations, but no one outside of the room saw any daylight between us. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so that sort of organically grew. And part of it was me just not knowing any better. Part of it was just being in a new position. Like I need to be a good lieutenant. And you know what I mean? And then when I became, the pinnacle leader in the school, and I had my APs, I could actively teach that dynamic to them. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Yeah.
it would be push back on me, tell me what I'm wrong, that kind of thing, because it was a journey with that principle to get there. But it really was kind of organic, and I just learned it through the observation and reflecting. You know what I mean? Long
Yeah. And
before I was just yeah, long before I was self-study proponent, I was self-studying just because it was a natural inclination.
right. Well, and I'm a big fan of, I think you observe, and so in the role that I'm in now, I had last semester to follow the lead, listen to
Mm-hmm.
what they were saying to me, try
Yeah.
and fill in those gaps and be a good cover for the faculty that were doing, the yeoman's work.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm in a bit of a different position in that program where it's my job to make things run. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the problems are coming, fast and furious.
Mm-hmm.
So, but to your point, I think you kind of hit it on the head. The thing I think I need to figure out how to have the conversation with him. I'm a if you and I want to have it out, we can have it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go
Mm-hmm.
behind closed doors, you lay it out, you talk it
Mm-hmm.
through. But I would never let any of the other faculty know that we're having an
Yeah.
issue or that we're having a disagreement, because when we're in front of faculty, we are united.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having many instances where this person is contradicting me and sending it out to, 7, 8 people in an email, where
You
I'm
don't think
dealing with a
he's not
problem.
under
I'm dealing with a fire, I'm putting out a fire, I'm dealing with a situation, and then he'll contradict me in what he wants to see happen. And it's not his call.
he's not I'm not sensing that he's intentionally undermining. I think it's just communication.
I I do not believe, as of yet, I do not believe that it's intentional, but I do think part of the conversation that I think I'm going to need to have is going to be about what is the intention.
So do you think it's others new one of the traps that new leaders, well, not always, often fall into is the need to please. So is it that he's a new leader and he's pleasing people, giving them that what he thinks they want? You know what I mean?
No, I don't
Okay.
think it's that, because one, I think the students are not going to be happy with
Mm,
some of the. I think it's almost. I used to work with somebody um, that was in a chair position, not this person, somebody else. Um, and every time you would deal with a situation, they would then have to weigh in on it. And the problem was every time they weighed in on it, they were a little late to the game, and things
mhm,
were already rolling and things were already happening. And
mhm,
and so then you had to go back and you either had to explain to this person or you had to stop what had started, and then so then you had to get everybody back on the same page, and then you had to start over again. And it was a
mhm.
real time waste. And it made us look disorganized. It made us look incompetent to all kinds of people, whether it was students or other individuals you were working with, because we weren't coming across as a united front.
Was that
So
a was that a need to be heard so much, or a fear like I got to put something in regardless of what it is?
yeah, I think for that person it was more in lines of I've come to believe that there's a lot of folks that are in leadership positions that worry if they don't weigh in on everything, somebody's going to think they're incompetent because they already have a bit of an inferiority complex about the role they're in. They already are feeling a little shaky themselves about can they do the job or do they
I,
know how to do the job.
I
And
think yeah,
yeah,
I think
go ahead.
imposter syndrome has become a cliche, but I think it's real.
Yeah,
And people, so many people don't really know how to lead, and it's I don't think there's any natural leaders. I think it takes over. I mean, I'm sure there's data on both sides of that story, but I don't think there's necessarily any natural leaders per se. I think it's people that develop into it, and but some often people are really good at what they do, and then they get elevated into a position, and really leadership is completely different than teaching pedagogy to
yeah,
undergrads, or a graduate student. It's a different thing, and it is a matter of the fear. And I agree with you. I mean, it takes a lot, but as I find myself much more confident just to sit quietly now, I'm comfortable with it
yeah.
than I used to be. I used to feel like I had to say stuff, you know what I mean? Just to say,
Oh yeah, me too, for sure.
and I
That's
see that all the time with people. They feel like I better say something here, you know what I mean?
yeah, right.
Um, but it's probably fear. It's probably some element of, imposter syndrome. Again, it's cliche, but I think it's real. Some measure of just needing to really think mindfully about their emotional intelligence. You know what I mean? Before you say it, you think through: do I really am I adding anything here, or am I not adding it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, you know, yeah. I mean, I think that's like
And
you.
I think this might be a theme that we come back to a lot because when we a lot of times when you and I talk about various leaders that we come in contact with or need to interact with,
Mhm,
we're talking about people that have been in the positions or have been in leadership positions for a long period of time, and yet we're
mhm,
looking at them still going, This is not the most effective way to do this work."
mhm,
And
mhm,
that's frustrating. Where I see this situation differently is this is a young new leader. And so how
mhm,
do we make sure that this person gets the supports they need to be successful?
mhm,
And I'm not sure how to make that happen once they've if well, I guess two things. One, there's no real training to be in this particular position this person's in unless the university ascribes to something, that they're going to
Hmm.
do something. But a lot of that has to do with timelines and due dates. That's,
Hmm.
paperwork. That's not how to be a leader of your department.
Right.
And so that's really not going to fix the issue. And then it relies on the individual being self-aware.
Yeah.
And whereas you and I have found a place, and I think we found it pretty early on, where we were comfortable saying to each other, I'm bad at this, or I'm struggling with this, because that was part of, I think, the research relationship we were building. I don't know that most people feel comfortable in their day-to-day job.
Hmm.
The beauty of what you and I do is that there's no skin in the game, right? Where neither one of us is going to get the other one fired.
Oh, okay.
And, and
Yes.
we have similar aspirations long term outside of the current work that we're in. So
Mhm.
so there's a reason to figure out how to work together. Whereas if you're in a position of leadership and you're struggling, who do you go to and say, I'm struggling and I need help with this?
Right.
Or I'm doing something that's not working. I don't quite know what it is, but how do you do that as a leader? I mean, we give teachers mentors all the time. We've got all kinds of programming for that. We give, interns, but what do we do for people in leadership positions that want to get help but don't know where to go?
I think that's part of the gap. I think I think that's a big there is a big gap there. I think that for me, I'm trying to think. I mean, the person I mentioned was a mentor in a sense, but it wasn't really. I don't know if it was a not really mentorship necessarily in like what leadership is. I think it was um I kind of had to scrape and cut and you know what I mean and get to it myself a little bit. You know what I mean? And it's partly just human nature, psychology, understanding people. It's reading different things, distributive leadership. Why do I believe in that? Because I got to that sort of the hard way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you get empowering people around me was part of it. I don't know that I even had that. So I think that's probably on some level why it's such a thing for me to want to do with my APs and with my lead teachers and people like that because I kind of didn't have it. If that makes sense. Um, I guess going back to your like, I'm wondering do you have a formal structure in place? Do you like, you know what I mean? Like, because you're kind of being thrown into this and you're in a little bit of a foxhole, you know, and you put your head out, he puts his head out. I mean, it's you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not an ideal situation to, you know what I mean? It's more of a crucible than it is a finely hoed garden to grow this thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to figure out, what my approach is going to be, like how we're gonna talk about it on the next level. Um,
What kind of relationship do you have? I mean, is it like,
well, that's part of what surprised me too.
yeah,
I thought that we had a pretty solid collegial relationship. We're all notorious for texting and, when there's an issue, hey, can I call you quick?
yeah,
And you talk through issues, and we do that a lot. So I don't understand if we can do that in some situations, why would you like undermine me? Because I see it as undermining the instructions I'm giving, right? I'm telling a student to do something in particular, or I'm telling a student we're going to move in this direction, and then I
mhm,
get, him chiming in. When I and maybe I need to clarify to him, when I see you on an email, it's just to keep you informed. It's
mhm.
not to get a response. Because
That
I've
might
already
be,
because as the program coordinator, I've already made my mind up of what we're doing.
yeah, that might be exactly the kind of little thing that is a thing. And he might feel like he's supporting you somehow or taking whatever the directive is and then making the pieces fit somehow. Plus, is he getting, the doc student?
The crunch on this. And so I'm going to, I may stop recording. But there's some extenuating circumstances that he's unaware of right now that
Mhm.
he should be aware of to maybe just back off a little.
You know, it's interesting you say that. It's another experience of mine when I was in Charlotte. My direct report, he was chief academic officer. He was awesome. He was great. Loved working with him. But there was times I was frustrated. But what I realized was he just knows more what's going on than I do.
Mhm.
I see a small part of the field. He sees the whole field just because, you know what I mean? The
Yeah,
difference of being in the top 6 in the organization is a lot different than being in the top 30 in the organization. You know what I mean? Like
right.
there's a lot more information there. And once I realized, well, Brian just has more information on this than I do. He's not, and he can't tell me everything. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's just at some level there has to be trust. So on some level he just needs to trust you, and maybe it's a matter of like simple things like that. If I'm CCing you, I'm just letting you know. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like I don't know. I mean that's even people I've worked with for years. We've had that kind of thing. I mean, I have people even now that sometimes they're trying to help and they'll overreach a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it's I don't know.
Well, and I'm one that there is so many things going on at any given time that I get very frustrated when I have to go back and do something again.
Mm-hmm.
Once I've taken care of it, I've taken care of it. Leave it be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm trying. So for my own leadership, I'm thinking about my own issues in this. Um, I've had to talk to myself a little bit about. I've been every day getting up and saying the same mantra to stick to the plan, not the mood. Stick
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 to the what?
stick to the plan, not the mood.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so just because I'm pissy about something is not a reason to
Mm-hmm.
not stay focused and get done what you need to get done today.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things of being a leader is you don't get to do that.
That's right.
But I mean, if you're a follower your whole life, you get to throw bombs and
Right.
just oh that's wrong, just get to complain about it. You don't get to do that if you're taking on leadership role.
No.
And again, you're not leading people to make more money this quarter. You know what I mean? You're leading in an area that has very significant uh, impact on the world.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. No, I maybe how can you sit down and have that conversation?
Well, I think that's what I'm thinking about. Any suggestions, any advice you want to give me? Because I've been thinking about how do I go about this so this person doesn't feel blindsided and doesn't feel um, defensive.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the easy answer is to get defensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's our natural take when somebody's coming at us with information that's not necessarily positive to
Mm-hmm.
get defensive. So how do I go about that and at the same time get my point across? I do think, just talking to you, I do think coming up with, I need to maybe inform him of what I mean by a CC.
Yeah,
And
maybe
and I feel like if you feel like you need to respond, the response needs to be text me and say, "Can I call you?"
yeah, yeah.
Before you, because otherwise it sends out mixed messages like we are not a united front.
So let me see, make sure I understand. Like, so you're saying you'll send something out. This is the way we're doing it, and then he'll follow up with something different.
Yes.
Okay.
And it'll be, no, I want to do it this way.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
but it's not really this person's call.
Right. Are you having the conversation before you send the email? Is he a part of that process?
No, and doesn't need to be. He's not,
Hmm.
but not to be weighing in on program decisions, and particularly program decisions that are limited in scope, not earth shattering, game changing.
Well, I guess when I would think about that, it would either be okay. Option one is, there's probably more than two options, but option one, say, okay, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it, even though I don't have to tell you that, I will. Or option two is like, there's just stuff you're not going to know and you don't need to know. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
like, I think I err on the first side. I tell my people more than they need to know, just because I'm always thinking you guys are going to be a principal next. You know what I mean? And that's not easy. I mean, I have one who's she's going into her third year with me now, right? And so it's a lot more of, okay, you're going to be a principal. Like
Right.
you're not new to here now. You're going to be a principal, and she's struggling with that sometimes too. You know what I mean? But I give her more information than she probably needs, and it's probably sometimes overwhelming. But they know why I'm doing what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Right. Well,
Um,
and the other interesting thing about this right now, and this, I mean, this happens a lot, I think, in all of our jobs and all of our, you know, whether it's public school or university, it's, I think, very similar, that there's only so many people that want to take on these jobs.
yeah,
That's number one. Uh, and then I think the conflicting piece for me, I want to be supportive of this person. There's there's lots of things that are happening that if I spend my day and your day telling you all of the things that are happening at once, well, neither
yeah,
of us are actually going to get anything accomplished.
right, right.
You've got to have some level of trust in your leaders that they are doing what's best for the program or for the department.
Are
My
you are the two of you in a position to redefine the roles to some degree?
I think so. And
Yeah.
that may be the best approach to take on it, because I do find this person to be very innovative and creative and, forward thinking, forward leaning in his work. So I do think there's some real opportunity there to do some really cool things. Um, I think where I'm hesitant is I've never had to actually confront anyone in this program
Mhm.
about anything. Last semester, I went along with exactly how things were because I wasn't in a position, I'm a believer when you come into a building, you see how it runs and then you make changes. You don't do it right out the gate. But I also am one that says often, don't try and go be a leader where you've been a teacher, right?
Hmm.
Because it can be very hard for your faculty to see you in a different role, and it's best to go somewhere new. And
I don't
I
know about
think
best.
I think I'm
It's an
probably
easier.
having that trouble.
I think it's an easier path, not necessarily best path. It could be the best path to rise up through. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's probably, yeah, I would say it's probably an easier path. There's going to be less problematic. I'll put it that way.
But
You
I
know what I
think
mean?
there can be times when it's very hard for people to see you in a different position. They still see you
Oh,
in a certain
absolutely.
role.
But if they do see you in a big, if they do and they see you grow from one thing to another, that's also very significant too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm just probably deconstructing the word best. I'm saying it's harder, but maybe who knows?
Yeah. I mean, I think that those are some of that both of us are in that position. And I think we could, like, I think I could use that as part of the conversation as well.
So
That
do you
both
have
of us are
a
in new roles that we
yeah?
need to work with each other. But there's
Do
a
you have
couple of
you have
things.
an opp
Yeah.
sorry,
No,
we're
you go
saying
ahead.
you have an opportunity to redefine and you can do it together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a good thing. Um, is there a hard line? Do you have a like list of things that like he shouldn't know? You know what I mean? Would be, you know what I mean? Or they absolutely can't know the other things. And
Well,
then
it's not really a question of that there's anything I don't want him to know.
mhm,
It's more of there's so many things happening at once.
okay.
I can't possibly explain every single thing to you. But like, I mean, the example I was giving you, there was 5 or 6 different emails that had already gone by, and he didn't say anything to any of those. And then all of a sudden, this was an issue.
Mm, Hmm.
And so like once I actually solidified something happening for this person, for this
Mhm.
student, then he weighed in. Well, it was too late to weigh in then.
Mhm. Maybe that's the conversation. Maybe it's a matter of weighing in at the right time, not post hoc when the decision's made. You know what I mean? Maybe it's just communication and just level setting, I guess, or process setting. You know, hey, how did it work before the person in your job before? Who was the lieutenant to her? Like, how did they operate? Sounds like when you were in the position similar to what he's in, it was your natural inclination ability to build that relationship. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. And he might not just have that natural, he just might not have that skill set. That's something that needs to be.
Yeah.
And all in a in a perfect world, the the person down the hierarchical chain shouldn't have to have that. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so maybe that's part of the thing as you're rethinking and rebuilding the culture is maybe we won't make it dependent on the subordinate's ability to build a relationship with the boss. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Maybe that's all these things that are, you know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
you're right. It's fraught too because, like you said, we're a whole point of what we're doing is I can say stuff that you might not like, but if you're my boss, that might be a little more problematic. You know what I
Right.
mean?
I mean, the good thing about this research relationship is that there is no power structure.
Right, right, right.
You
But
know,
I would also say that I don't see you I don't see you being afraid of or not welcoming contrary opinions. You know what I mean? Regardless of the relationship,
yeah.
he may not know that. He may think, shit, I better not say this to, you know what I mean? Or there's also a possibility there was a moment of like, oh my God, there's been 6 emails. I better say something. You know what I mean? That's a
Yeah.
possibility too. And then it's when what gets said is something that's ends up being contradictory to what you were thinking. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Well,
I'm
and
just
I think you're helping remind me of things that I could say that are true about me, which is I like a good constructive conflict.
yeah,
I like debate. I like to have discussion. Um,
but not in front of other people.
I don't like it in front of other people when I'm in a position where I'm trying to lead people a certain way. Um, and I definitely don't like. I find it undermining, and I don't think you should ever do that to other human beings. That's just a core principle I have that I don't
Right.
think that I
I
mean,
don't.
I think if we're in a room of group discussion and we say, "Hey, we're all coming together because this is an issue and we need to have a discussion," then we need to have the discussion. Um,
I'm not sensing though his intent is to undermine. Is that correct?
I still want to believe that that is not the case,
Okay.
or else I think I'd be like, really ticked off.
That's a whole different conversation then.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah.
And I do think there's another individual that I'll get these emails from, Jamey, do you want me to take care of this because it needs to happen now? Well, I find that to be a problem
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
one, most of the time it doesn't need to happen right now. And
Yeah.
two, I'm in this role, you're not, you didn't want this job. And so stop telling me what needs to happen now.
Yeah. False urgency.
Because right, false urgency. Look at that. Look at pulling out the big
Yeah.
words for us tonight. Um, yeah, but again, I go back around all of this for me. What like is screaming, the flashing neon is none of us have leadership training in this particular setting. Um,
Mhm.
now, our department chair at one point in time had been a principal in charge of special ed. So I mean, those are leadership skills that had to be learned. Um, but I then go back around again to some of us have a proclivity to leadership and some of us do not.
Mhm.
Some of us would make good managers,
Mhm.
but that's not leadership.
Well, good leaders also manage when they need to manage, and they lead when they need to lead. I think but I do go back to, there's not really truly, how do you really lead people? That's a struggle. I mean, sometimes what we call people leaders who, I mean, I don't know. Patton's leadership style was probably not really leadership. It was dictatorial, and this is how you're
Right.
going to do it. That's not really leadership. Um, I guess, yeah. I guess the other one was like, so you were talking also, like, you really kind of have two problems. You have that thing, and then you have like the staff. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And teachers are like herding cats, and I can't imagine what professors are like, you know. And it's what I've found is, fine. Do you have low hanging fruit? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Are there easy wins that, with the staff, but also with your lieutenant? Like, where are the easy wins we could do this, and then you start building momentum. You know what I mean? I've been reading, looking a lot of like adult ADD stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, one way of thinking is you do the hard thing first. You eat the frog first thing in the morning, right?
Right.
But with the literature with ADHD is no, you do the easy things first. You knock out this, you knock out this, you knock out this, then you start building momentum. I think in leadership, that's like, you get that low hanging fruit with both the people there, and then and again, hello hanging fruit, just easier things to solve, you know. And I don't know if there is any, or maybe that's a conversation that you and he have. Where's the low hang? What are our easy opportunities to start to just build our relationship, and then build the relationship with these people? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just another thought. I mean, I don't know.
Well, and so not to be quoting too much Brene Brown, but you know, I'm of the Brene Brown, the Barack Obama model of, how do you lead from behind? How do you, when the boulder is there, you got to get it up the mountain. So, I am in a position where I do have knowledge and skills.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a certain disposition that
Mm-hmm.
I think lends could make me a good mentor. I know I'm a good mentor.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you have to be receptive on the other end.
Yeah.
And I think
Um,
that's where, like, I'm willing to tolerate some things right now because I know you're learning how to do this job.
mm-hmm. Well, I think there's like, again, I'm not trying to be too prescriptive here, but like, I think there's a simple like communication. Like,
Yeah.
hey, don't when I CC you, this is what I mean. Don't jump on the fifth email and
Yeah.
then have a different take on it. Probably trying to be helpful. Give them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's also, or there's, I don't know, there's things that he does well that maybe you also do well that you could just not do to let him shine in the area. You know what I mean?
Oh, he has tremendous strengths. I
Yeah.
mean, I just see him going places and doing some amazing things. If I think about myself at the same, age and experience that he's
Yeah.
at, I mean, he's a rock star. He's going to do great things.
Mm-hmm.
And but that doesn't mean that the learning has stopped. I mean, I believe that we are always learning,
Yeah.
and part of staying relevant as we're getting older is to continue
Yeah.
to learn. Um, so
Mm-hmm.
I would never, like, I don't want, I'm not out to hurt his feelings. I don't want him to feel bad, but
Are
but
you afraid of that? Is that a fear?
that he'll feel bad,
Yeah, and you'll hurt his feelings.
probably. Be only because, but let me say this, not because I'm afraid to hurt your feelings, because sometimes that happens, and that's your
Mm-hmm.
response. I don't feel a need to have ownership over your response. Like, I've grown enough to know that. Um, but I've also worked in a very dysfunctional faculty.
You also got to be taking care of people, and so you don't want to. Like, that's a fine line. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
I mean, first and foremost for me always is the students, and then the faculty. that work for me. And then if I can, help anybody else out, that's great. But those are priorities 1 and 2.
Mhm. Hmm. I think sometimes, again, I'm not saying I got all the answers here, but like sometimes it's a matter of having, okay, what does this person, what's the next step with this person, right? And instead of going right at it and saying, okay, we're going to talk about this today, you just wait for the opportunity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, if it's an egregious thing, again, I think, I don't know, egregious is the right word, but like in this case, I think it's as simple as like, hey, don't jump on
Yeah.
5 emails in. That's simple. Like,
And I think what I'm worried about is it will, if I don't deal with it now,
it, it'll be
it'll
really bad.
it'll get
What's the